Before we dive into today's expanded story, I really need your help. We have a big goal. We need to reach 1,000 subscribers on the channel in the next 15 days. If we hit that milestone, the channel will finally qualify for financial support from the platform, which will help us keep creating more stories like this one, improve the quality, and bring you even more content regularly. So if you're enjoying these narrated tales, please hit that subscribe button right now, turn on notifications, and share this video with friends who love heartfelt stories. It means the world to us. Let's make it happen together. Now, let's begin the expanded story. He thought he was hiring a simple governess until he saw the scar he himself had made in childhood. In the heart of Victorian England, during the prosperous reign of Queen Victoria in the mid-19th century, the grand estates of the aristocracy dotted the countryside like jewels on a velvet landscape. One such jewel was Ashford Manor, the ancestral seat of the Harrington family. Dukes of Ashford for generations. Nestled in the rolling hills of Derbyshire, the manor was a magnificent structure of pale stone with towering chimneys, ivy-clad walls, and vast gardens that bloomed in riotous colour from spring through autumn. The gardens were meticulously designed. Formal rose parterres near the house gave way to wilder woodland walks, a sparkling lake with a boathouse, and orchards heavy with fruit in season. Inside, the halls echoed with the quiet dignity of history, polished oak panelling that gleamed under the light of crystal chandeliers, tall mullioned windows draped in heavy velvet, and rooms filled with treasures from around the empire, delicate porcelain from China, intricate tapestries from France, marble statues from Italy, and an extensive library with thousands of books bound in finest leather. Alexander Harrington, the current Duke of Ashford, had inherited this legacy at the age of 28, 5 years prior, upon the sudden passing of his father from a lingering illness that had confined the old Duke to his bed for many months. Now, in his early 30s, Alexander was a striking figure, tall and athletic from years of riding across the estate and country pursuits, like fox hunting in season. With raven black hair neatly trimmed, a strong jawline, and eyes of deep blue that could shift from stormy intensity during estate meetings to gentle warmth when he played with his young niece. He carried the weight of his title with quiet resolve, attending to estate matters with meticulous care, reviewing accounts with his steward, visiting tenants to ensure their welfare, implementing modern farming techniques learned from agricultural societies. During the London season, he represented his peers in the House of Lords, debating reforms and policies, yet he always longed to return to the peace of Derbyshire. Yet, beneath his composed exterior lay a profound sense of solitude. The manor, though grand and filled with loyal servants, often felt empty and echoing. His mother had passed when he was a boy, his father more recently, his beloved sister lost in tragedy, and he had yet to marry, though matchmaking mammas in London constantly paraded eligible young ladies before him at balls, operas, and soirees in Mayfair. Alexander preferred the tranquility of the countryside, finding solace in long, solitary rides across the windswept moors, evenings spent reading by the roaring fire in the library, or corresponding with scholars and friends on matters of agricultural improvement, philanthropic works, and the rapid changes sweeping the nation with the expansion of railways and factories. The one bright light in his life was his young niece, Lady Eliza Harrington. At 8 years old, she was a delightful child, with cascading golden curls that bounced when she ran, rosy cheeks from outdoor play, and bright green eyes sparkling with curiosity and a touch of mischief. Eliza had come to live at Ashford Manor 2 years earlier, orphaned after a devastating carriage accident that claimed the lives of her parents, Alexander's only sister, Amelia, and her husband, Lord Charles Wentworth, a kind but adventurous gentleman. The accident occurred on a dark, rain-slicked country road during a fierce thunderstorm as they returned from a weekend visit to old friends in a neighbouring county. The horses had bolted at a crack of lightning, the carriage overturned into a ditch, and despite the efforts of rescuers, both were lost. Alexander had been in London attending Parliament when the urgent messenger arrived with the tragic news, and he rushed home by the fastest train and coach, arriving to find little Eliza bewildered, tear-streaked, and grieving amidst the black-draped rooms and hushed whispers of mourning. In the final moments, as Amelia lay pale and weak in her bedchamber, tended by the family physician, she had grasped Alexander's hand with surprising strength. "Promise me, Alex," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the patter of rain against the windows. "Promise you'll raise Eliza with love. Give her the childhood we had, the freedom to explore the gardens, the stories by the fireside, the joy of learning without fear. Don't let duty stifle her spirit." Alexander had vowed it solemnly, tears streaming down his face as he held her hand until the end. And he had kept that promise as best he could in the years since. Eliza had her own charming suite of rooms on the nursery floor, decorated in soft pinks and whites with lace curtains, filled with porcelain dolls, illustrated books, a rocking horse, and a small pianoforte for early music lessons. The servants doted on her, the kind nanny who had cared for her since infancy, the footmen who carried her on their shoulders, the cook who baked her favorite jam tarts. Alexander himself spent as much time as his demanding duties allowed, reading bedtime stories from adventure books, teaching her to ride a gentle pony on the estate paths, organizing picnics by the lake where they fed the swans, or simply sitting with her in the conservatory watching raindrops on the glass. But Alexander knew that a child of Eliza's age and station needed more than sporadic attention from a busy uncle. She required structured guidance, a proper education in languages, music, history, drawing, embroidery, deportment, and all the accomplishments expected of a young lady of noble birth who would one day enter society. Thus, with a heavy heart but firm resolve, the search for a governess began in earnest. Discreet advertisements were placed in The Times, The Ladies' Magazine, and other respected periodicals, seeking a woman of refinement, impeccable education, gentle disposition, and experience with children of tender years. Responses flooded in from across the country, and interviews were arranged in the Manor's elegant morning room, a sunlit space with bay windows overlooking the rose gardens, comfortable chintz-covered chairs, and sunlight streaming across intricate Persian rugs. Alexander conducted the interviews personally, assisted occasionally by the faithful housekeeper, Mrs. Langley, a stout, silver-haired woman who had served the family faithfully for over 40 years and knew exactly what the household required. Candidate after candidate arrived by carriage or post-chaise, some prim and severe, with pinched faces and armed with rulers and stern philosophies of discipline. Others young and flighty, fresh from finishing schools, and more suited to being companions than educators. One spoke endlessly of rote memorization and strict timetables. Another seemed overwhelmed by the grandeur of the manor, stammering through her responses. None quite captured the delicate balance Alexander sought. Someone who could nurture Eliza's sensitive spirit after her loss, encourage her natural curiosity, while preparing her rigorously for the expectations of her station. As weeks stretched into months, with the seasons shifting and autumn leaves beginning to fall in carpets of gold and crimson across the gravel drives, the air growing crisp with the promise of frosts and winter fires, Alexander's hope began to wane. Then, on a blustery afternoon in late October, when grey clouds scudded across the sky and rain lashed relentlessly against the window panes, the final applicant arrived. Miss Eleanor Whitmore descended from the hired post-chaise with remarkable poise, despite the mud-splattered hem of her travelling cloak and the wind tugging at her bonnet. She was 28 years old, with lustrous chestnut-brown hair coiled neatly beneath a simple yet elegant bonnet, fair skin touched by a natural healthy glow from country walks, and warm, hazel eyes that held quiet intelligence, depth, and unmistakable kindness. Her attire was modest but tasteful, a well-cut gown of deep forest green wool, practical for travel yet flattering in its simplicity, with a matching cloak and sturdy boots. She carried a leather portfolio containing her references and letters of recommendation, along with a small trunk, as if prepared to begin her duties without delay, if selected. Mrs. Langley, ever efficient, showed her into the morning room, announcing her arrival with a curtsy. Alexander awaited behind his imposing mahogany desk, papers and correspondence neatly stacked. He rose courteously as she entered, gesturing to the comfortable chair opposite. "Miss Whitmore, welcome to Ashford Manor. I trust your journey was not too arduous despite the weather." "Thank you, Your Grace," she replied, her voice soft and clear, with a faint northern lilt that spoke of her Yorkshire origins. She curtsied gracefully and took the offered seat, folding her hands calmly in her lap. The interview unfolded most pleasantly, far more engaging than the previous ones. Eleanor described her education at a highly respected seminary for young ladies in Bath, where she had excelled in literature, modern and ancient languages, music, drawing, and the fine arts. She had then served as governess to the 3 young daughters of Sir Reginald Thorpe, a respected baronet in Yorkshire, for 6 years, overseeing their education from nursery ages until the eldest debuted in local society and married. Her references glowed with unqualified praise. One from Lady Thorpe read, "Miss Whitmore possesses not only extensive knowledge, but true wisdom in imparting it. She instills curiosity, confidence, and moral strength in her charges without resort to harshness." Alexander leaned forward, intrigued. "And your approach to teaching, Miss Whitmore? My niece, Lady Eliza, has suffered great loss at a young age. She is bright and eager, but sensitive to upheaval." Eleanor's expression softened with genuine empathy. "I believe in kindness above all else, Your Grace. Lessons should inspire joy and wonder, rather than dread, reading great works to spark the imagination, exploring the natural world, to teach science and appreciation for God's creation, playing music to soothe and express the soul. Discipline comes through gentle understanding and encouragement, not fear or punishment. A child who feels truly loved and secure learns eagerly and grows in character." Alexander felt a genuine stir of optimism for the first time in months. This woman seemed ideal in every way. They discussed specifics in detail: daily French conversation to build fluency, advanced pianoforte practice with pieces by Beethoven and Chopin, embroidery and watercolor painting to refine accomplishments, history taught through engaging narratives of queens and explorers, geography with maps and tales of distant lands. Eleanor even suggested innovative ideas, such as incorporating outdoor lessons, botany walks in the extensive gardens to identify plants and flowers, stargazing on clear nights to learn constellations, or gentle nature journaling to combine art and science. To assess compatibility directly, Alexander rang for Eliza to be brought down. The child entered the room a bit shyly at first, clutching a favorite rag doll, her golden curls tied with ribbons, but she soon warmed to Eleanor's gentle questions about her favorite stories, animals in the estate menagerie, or games she enjoyed. Eliza giggled delightedly when Eleanor perfectly mimicked the call of a robin from the window ledge, drawing a bright smile. As the interview drew toward conclusion and tea was served, fine Darjeeling with lemon biscuits, Eleanor removed her bonnet and gloves to relax slightly. Turning to place them neatly on a side table, a loose strand of hair escaped its pins, shifting to reveal the delicate curve of her neck. There, faint but unmistakable in the afternoon light filtering through the rain-streaked windows, was a thin scar, a pale crescent-shaped line about 2 inches long, just below her left ear. Alexander's breath caught sharply in his throat. His teacup paused midway to his lips, and the room seemed to blur and tilt for a long moment as a flood of childhood memories surged forth unbidden, vivid and overwhelming, like opening a long sealed trunk of the past. He was 10 years old again, transported back to the sun-dappled gardens of Ashford Manor during a lavish summer garden fete hosted by his parents over 20 years ago. The lawns had been filled with the laughter of children from neighbouring gentry families, games of croquet on the smooth grass, blind man's bluff among the hedges, adventurous tree climbing in the ancient oaks, and lemonade served under striped marquees. Among those children was little Eleanor Whitmore, then just 7 years old, the daughter of a prosperous but untitled landowner whose estate bordered Ashford lands. She was a quiet, bookish girl even then, often found curled up with a storybook under a shady shrub, her pigtails bouncing as she turned pages filled with tales of fairies, knights, and faraway adventures. Young Alexander, full of boyish energy and a touch of reckless mischief, had been with a group of rowdy boys near one of the old oak trees. His father had recently gifted him a small pocket knife for whittling and carving sticks, a mark of growing responsibility. Proudly showing off, he was etching elaborate patterns into a low-hanging branch. "Look here, Ellie," he'd called out impulsively, spotting the quiet girl wandering nearby with curious interest. "Come see, I'm carving a grand sailing ship, just like in the adventure books." Drawn by his enthusiasm, she had approached cautiously, standing on tiptoes to peer at his work. In his excitement to demonstrate a fancy flourish, the knife slipped suddenly in his sweaty young grasp. The sharp blade grazed the side of her neck, a shallow cut but bright blood welled immediately, staining her white pinafore. Little Eleanor gasped softly, her hand flying to her throat, eyes wide with shock and sudden tears, but remarkably, she made no loud cries or screams. Alexander, horrified beyond words, dropped the knife as if it burned and shouted frantically for help. His face pale with guilt, servants and parents rushed over in a flurry. Eleanor's mother comforted her, while the family doctor, fortunately a guest at the fete, was summoned immediately. He cleaned and stitched the wound neatly in a guest room, pronouncing it minor and likely to heal cleanly. The Whitmores were remarkably gracious about the incident. "Merely a childish accident. Boys will be boys," her father had said with a reassuring clap on young Alexander's shoulder. But Alexander, racked with overwhelming guilt and shame, had secretly arranged for bouquets of wildflowers to be sent to her recovery room, daisies and forget-me-nots picked from the meadows, though anonymously, too embarrassed to face her directly. He avoided her for the remainder of the summer visit, the incident burning in his conscience. Time marched on relentlessly. The Whitmore family later faced financial reverses, poor investments in speculative ventures, and a series of failed harvests, forcing them to sell their estate and relocate to more modest circumstances farther north in Yorkshire. Alexander, sent away to Eton for schooling, and later to Oxford for university, gradually lost touch with most childhood acquaintances as his world expanded. The incident faded into a distant, lingering regret, one he seldom dwelled upon amid the demands of adulthood, until this very moment in his own morning room. "Your Grace?" Eleanor's gentle voice pulled him back to the present. She had noticed his fixed stare and lightly touched the scar with a fingertip, a subtle habit perhaps born of old self-consciousness in mirrors. "Is something the matter? Have I a smudge, or—" Alexander set down his teacup carefully, composing himself though his heart still raced. He cleared his throat. "Forgive my impertinence, Miss Whitmore, but that scar upon your neck, it looks strikingly familiar. Might I inquire how you came by it?" She hesitated only briefly, then offered a calm, reassuring smile. "It was from a childhood accident many years ago, Your Grace. A boy was carving patterns in a tree branch at a garden party, and the knife slipped. It was quite minor, barely more than a scratch in the end." Alexander's pulse quickened further. "And the name of that boy, if you recall it?" She paused thoughtfully, her hazel eyes searching his face as fragments of memory stirred. Alexander Harrington, I believe, from a grand summer fete at... Wait. Recognition dawned slowly, her eyes widening in quiet surprise. You, Your Grace. You are little Alex from that day in the oak tree. He nodded slowly, rising from his chair with a formal bow that belied the emotion in his voice. Indeed, Miss Whitmore, Eleanor. I am he, though far from little now. I've never forgotten that afternoon. I am profoundly, deeply sorry for the injury I caused you. It was thoughtless, reckless carelessness on my part. Eleanor shook her head gently, her smile warm and utterly devoid of any resentment or bitterness. Oh, Your Grace, it was merely an accident of childhood. Long ago and long forgiven even then. I barely think of it now. You were so kind afterward. Those lovely wildflowers that appeared in my room were from you, weren't they, even if sent anonymously? She laughed lightly, a melodic sound. And truly, it healed quickly and cleanly, teaching me only to be more cautious around sharp blades. Alexander marveled inwardly at her extraordinary grace and forgiveness. Still, fate has a most curious sense of humor, bringing you to this very house, applying for a position under my roof. Perhaps it offers an opportunity for long overdue proper amends. Or perhaps, she replied softly, her eyes meeting his with steady kindness, it is simply a chance to care for a dear child who needs guidance and affection. In that instant, Alexander knew without any doubt that Eleanor Whitmore was the perfect governess for Eliza, not only for her qualifications and gentle philosophy, but for the quiet strength and forgiveness she embodied. He hired her on the spot. Arrangements made for her to begin the following week, once final references were confirmed. Eleanor arrived at Ashford Manor the following Monday, her trunk unloaded from the carriage under a weak autumn sun that filtered through scattering clouds. Mrs. Langley personally showed her to the governess's quarters, a pleasant suite on the upper floor near the nursery, with a bedroom, sitting room, and small study overlooking the rear gardens. The rooms were comfortably furnished with a four-poster bed draped in blue damask, a writing desk by the window, a bookshelf already stocked with educational volumes, and a cheerful fire crackling in the grate to ward off the chill. His Grace wishes you every comfort, Mrs. Langley said warmly, and Lady Eliza is eager to begin. Indeed. Eliza greeted Eleanor with shy excitement in the schoolroom, a bright, airy space on the same floor, equipped with child-sized desks, a large world globe, wall maps of Europe and the empires, slates and chalk, stacks of books from fairy tales to histories, a pianoforte in the corner, and cabinets filled with watercolor paints, embroidery frames, and scientific specimens like pressed flowers and bird feathers collected over years. From the very first day, Eleanor and Eliza formed a natural bond. Lessons began promptly after breakfast, with a structured yet flexible routine designed to engage rather than exhaust. Mornings focused on core subjects. Arithmetic taught through playful games using polished pebbles gathered from the estate's streams as counters, or beads strung into patterns. Reading aloud from treasured classics such as The Pilgrim's Progress, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, a recent favorite, or selections from Shakespeare adapted for young minds. Eleanor read with expressive voices for each character, drawing giggles and wide-eyed wonder from Eliza. Spelling and penmanship followed, with Eleanor guiding Eliza's small hand in forming elegant copperplate letters on cream paper. French lessons were conversational and fun, naming objects in the room, singing simple chansons, or pretending to order tea en français during mid-morning breaks with milk and biscuits. Afternoons brought the accomplishments. Music at the pianoforte, where Eleanor's skilled fingers demonstrated scales and simple melodies by Mozart or Beethoven, then patiently coached Eliza through Für Elise or folk tunes. Eliza's early attempts were halting but enthusiastic, and Eleanor's praise, "Beautiful phrasing, my dear. You have a natural ear," built confidence note by note. Art lessons involved watercolor painting in the conservatory, surrounded by potted palms and blooming orchids, capturing the changing colors of autumn leaves or the manor's facade. Embroidery introduced basic stitches on samplers, with Eliza proudly creating flowers and initials under gentle guidance, but Eleanor believed learning extended beyond walls. Weather permitting, they took outdoor excursions, botany walks through the vast gardens, identifying roses in the parterres, herbs in the kitchen plots, or wildflowers along the woodland paths. They collected specimens, acorns, colourful maple leaves, feathers shed by peacocks strutting the lawns, to press in journals back in the schoolroom. On clearer days, they picnicked by the lake, feeding breadcrumbs to swans, while Eleanor wove lessons in natural history or geography, pointing to distant hills and imagining voyages across oceans. Eliza flourished visibly under this nurturing approach. The shadows of grief that had lingered in her young eyes began to lift. Her laughter rang more freely through the corridors, her appetite improved, to the cook's delight. And nightmares of the carriage accident grew rarer. She confided in Eleanor during quiet moments, missing her mama's lullabies or papa's stories, finding solace in gentle hugs, reassuring words, and prayers whispered together before bed. "You make everything feel safe, Miss Eleanor," Eliza said one evening, hugging her tightly. Alexander observed these changes from afar at first, deliberately passing the schoolroom door during lessons to catch snippets of Eleanor's patient explanations, or Eliza's excited questions about ancient Egypt or the stars. The sound of pianoforte duets drifting down the halls brought a smile to his usually serious countenance. Servants noticed too. The manor felt warmer, more alive. Gradually, Alexander found excuses to join them more directly. One morning, he entered the schoolroom during a history lesson on the Tudor monarchs. "Might I contribute a tale from my London visits?" he asked. "I've seen portraits of Queen Elizabeth at Whitehall." Eliza clapped in delight as he described the grandeur, and Eleanor listened attentively, her hazel eyes appreciative. Afternoons sometimes saw him accompanying their garden walks, pointing out improvements he planned, new greenhouses or restored fountains, while subtly learning Eleanor's thoughtful opinions on education or charity. "Children learn best when connected to the world around them," she said once, as they watched Eliza chase butterflies. "Books are wonderful, but nature teaches wonder." As autumn deepened, with leaves turning fiery reds and golds, carpeting paths in crisp layers, their conversations grew more personal during chance encounters in the vast library or the conservatory filled with exotic plants. Alexander recommended volumes from his shelves, Wordsworth's poems evoking the Lakes District, or Sir Walter Scott's historical romances. Eleanor shared her love for Jane Austen's keen observations in Pride and Prejudice, or Sense and Sensibility, reading passages aloud with wit that made him chuckle, a rare, genuine sound. They discussed broader topics too, the rapid changes in society with expanding railways linking cities, new factory acts protecting workers, the Queen's growing family and her influence on morals. Eleanor spoke thoughtfully of her own family's past prosperity and later challenges, how it taught resilience and gratitude for simple joys. Alexander opened up about the isolating weight of his title, the endless duties, the loss of family, the pressure to secure the lineage through marriage. "You carry it with such grace, Your Grace," she said softly one evening by the library fire, as rain pattered against the windows, "and your devotion to Lady Eliza shows a truly kind heart." "Your influence has brought light to us both," he replied, meeting her gaze longer than propriety might dictate. Winter arrived with the first snowfalls, blanketing the estate in pristine white, transforming gardens into a wonderland. Fires roared in every hearth, and the manor filled with the scents of evergreen boughs and spiced cider for the approaching Christmas season. Lessons adapted, indoor botany with hothouse flowers, or astronomy planned for clear nights, bundling up to view Orion through a telescope on the terrace. Eleanor organized gentle holiday preparations, decorating the nursery with paper chains and holly, baking gingerbread with Eliza in the vast kitchens under the cook's supervision. She arranged a small Christmas party for village children, inviting them to the Great Hall for games, carols, and gifts of books or toys from the manor's stores. Alexander joined wholeheartedly, dressing as Father Christmas to distribute presents, his deep laugh echoing as children cheered. Eliza beamed with pride, learning the joy of giving. Evenings by the Yule log became cherished rituals. The three of them gathered in the drawing room, Eleanor at the pianoforte leading carols like Silent Night or Hark, the Herald Angels Sing, Alexander's baritone joining harmoniously, Eliza's young voice piping in. Afterward, stories by the fireside, Eleanor retelling Dickens' A Christmas Carol with dramatic flair, or Alexander sharing family legends of Ashford ancestors. Through these shared moments, a gentle friendship deepened between Alexander and Eleanor. Stolen conversations over tea revealed shared values, compassion for the less fortunate, love of literature and nature, commitment to duty tempered by kindness. Alexander found himself anticipating her insights, her quiet laughter, the way her eyes lit when discussing a poem or Eliza's latest progress. One snowy afternoon, as they watched Eliza build a snowman on the lawn from the window, he turned to her. "Miss Whitmore, Eleanor, if I may be so bold, you have transformed this house in ways I scarcely imagined possible. It feels alive again." She blushed faintly in the firelight, reflecting off the snow. "And I have found a true home here, Your Grace, caring for Eliza, and these moments shared have been a blessing." Eliza, ever perceptive for her age, noticed the growing warmth. "Uncle Alex reads with us more now," she confided to Eleanor during a lesson. "And he smiles differently when you're here, like when Mama used to tell stories." As winter gave way to early hints of spring, snowdrops pushing through the thawing earth, lambs bleating in the fields, the bonds strengthened further. Lessons moved outdoors again, sketching emerging crocuses, studying bird migrations as swallows returned. Alexander's admiration for Eleanor's compassion, intelligence, and unassuming strength grew daily. He sought her company increasingly, discussing estate charities, asking her views on new books for the library, or simply walking the paths as Eliza played ahead. One evening in the library, as a late winter storm howled outside, he confessed more openly, "This house was shadowed by loss before your arrival. Now, with your light and Eliza's joy, it breathes with hope once more. And I feel truly at home," she replied, her voice soft with emotion. "Perhaps fate's curious path led here for healing, all of us." Spring arrived gently at Ashford Manor, as it always did in Derbyshire. First with delicate snowdrops and crocuses pushing through the thawing soil along the woodland edges, then with vibrant daffodils trumpeting yellow along the drives, and finally the full symphony of cherry blossoms and apple orchards bursting into pink and white froth. The air carried the fresh scent of turned earth from the estate farms, birdsong filled the mornings, and the lake mirrored skies of endless blue. With the season's renewal, daily life at the manor shifted outward once more. Lessons frequently moved to the gardens or the shaded terraces, where the mild sunshine invited longer explorations. Eleanor adapted the curriculum seamlessly to the awakening world. Botany became hands-on, examining budding roses in the formal parterres, sketching the intricate veins of new leaves, or gently dissecting flowers to reveal their inner structures, while explaining pollination with stories of busy bees. Zoology lessons involved observing the return of migratory birds, swallows darting under the eaves to rebuild nests, or robins hopping boldly near their picnic blankets. Eliza's nature journal grew thick with pressed specimens, watercolor illustrations, and careful notes in her improving handwriting. "Look, Miss Eleanor," she would exclaim, discovering a ladybug on a stem. "It has 7 spots, just like in the rhyme." Music practice continued indoors on rainy days, with Eliza progressing to more complex pieces, simple sonatinas by Clementi or cheerful waltzes that filled the halls with melody. French advanced to reading short stories by Perrault, acted out dramatically with dolls as props. History lessons came alive through tales of great explorers like Captain Cook, tied to geography sessions, poring over the great globe, tracing voyages across oceans with a finger. Alexander's involvement grew ever more natural. He often joined their outdoor excursions, sharing knowledge from his travels or Parliament connections, describing the Crystal Palace exhibition in London or the wonders of the British Museum's Egyptian artifacts. On one memorable afternoon, he arranged for the estate's head gardener to give a special tour of the greenhouses, filled with exotic pineapples and orchids imported from the colonies, delighting both Eliza and Eleanor with the humid, fragrant air and vibrant colors. Through these shared days, Alexander's admiration for Eleanor deepened profoundly. He marveled at her endless patience, her creative ways of igniting Eliza's curiosity, her quiet strength that turned even rainy days into adventures with indoor treasure hunts through the library or shadow puppets by candlelight. But more than her teaching, it was Eleanor herself who captivated him, her thoughtful insights during their increasingly frequent conversations, her gentle humor that drew rare, full laughs from him, the way her hazel eyes sparkled when discussing a favorite poem or watching Eliza's joy. Stolen moments alone became precious. A quiet tea in the conservatory after Eliza's bedtime, discussing books newly arrived from London, perhaps Trollope's latest novel or a volume of Tennyson's verse. Eleanor shared more of her past, the happy years in her family's former home, the challenges that followed, her choice to become a governess as a path of independence and purpose. "Teaching brings fulfillment," she said one evening, as twilight painted the sky in lavender hues. "Seeing a child grow in confidence and kindness, there is no greater reward." Alexander, in turn, opened his guarded heart further. "The title brings duty and isolation," he admitted, gazing out over the gardens. "Endless responsibilities, expectations to marry advantageously, secure the line, yet true companionship. That has eluded me until now. You and Eliza, you have brought warmth to rooms that were merely grand before." Her cheeks would flush softly at such words, but her replies were always steady and kind. "You honor me, Your Grace, this house, this family. It has become dear to me too." Eliza, with the unerring instinct of children, sensed the shifting affections clearly. "Uncle Alex looks at you the way Papa used to look at Mama," she whispered to Eleanor during a lesson one day, giggling behind her hand. With that special smile, summer bloomed in full glory. Long, golden days, perfect for garden parties, carefully scaled for Eliza's comfort, pony rides along shaded lanes, and lazy afternoons reading under the ancient oaks. The manor hosted a charitable fete for the village, with games on the lawn, refreshments under marquees, and Eleanor helping organize activities for the children, sack races, maypole dancing, storytelling tents. Alexander watched her move among the guests with natural grace, ensuring every child felt included, and his resolve strengthened. As roses reached their peak fragrance in the formal gardens, the very place where the old oak from childhood stood tall and majestic, now providing cool shade over stone benches, Alexander knew the time had come. One radiant afternoon in July, With the air humming with bees and the scent of blooming lavender, he invited Eleanor for a private walk while Eliza played nearby with her nanny, chasing butterflies in the meadow. They strolled the rose-lined paths, the same gardens that held echoes of their shared past. "Eleanor," he began, stopping beneath the oak and taking her hands gently in his. Sunlight dappled through the leaves, catching the warmth in her eyes. "That faint scar upon your neck. It once marked my boyish folly, a moment of carelessness I regretted for years. But your arrival here, your extraordinary forgiveness and grace, you have shown me that true amends are made not in grand gestures, but in daily kindness. You have transformed this home, healed the shadows of loss for Eliza, and awakened my heart in ways I never expected." She looked up at him, emotion shimmering in her gaze. "You bring light, joy, and love to every corner of Ashford Manor," he continued, voice steady with feeling. "I find I cannot imagine a future without you by my side, not as governess, but as my partner, my duchess, my wife. Eleanor Whitmore, will you do me the profound honor of marrying me?" Tears of quiet joy welled in her eyes as she nodded, squeezing his hands. "Yes, Alexander, with all my heart, yes. You have given me a home, a family, a love I scarcely dared dream of." Their embrace beneath the oak was tender and full of promise, the past fully redeemed in the present's happiness. News of the engagement spread delight through the household. Servants beaming, Mrs. Langley dabbing tears of joy, and Eliza danced with excitement upon hearing, declaring she would be the best flower girl ever. The wedding was a quiet yet beautiful affair in the manor's private chapel, adorned with summer roses and lilies. Close friends and local gentry attended, the Queen herself sending congratulations via letter. Eliza scattered petals down the aisle in a dress of pale blue, grinning widely as Eleanor walked toward Alexander in a gown of ivory silk. The faint scar at her neck hidden beneath delicate lace, but forever a symbol of their beginning. Life at Ashford Manor flourished in the years that followed. Eleanor became a beloved duchess, expanding charities, schools for village children, aid for tenants, libraries open to all. She and Alexander welcomed their own children, a son to inherit the title, and daughters with their mother's gentle spirit and father's dark hair. Eliza grew into a poised young lady, debuting successfully and always crediting Aunt Eleanor for her confidence. Evenings often found the family gathered in the gardens or by the fire, retelling stories. Alexander would sometimes trace the faint crescent scar on Eleanor's neck with tender fingers, smiling softly. "A mark of where our story truly began," he would whisper. "And a reminder," she would reply, leaning into him, "that even from childhood mistakes, the most beautiful love can grow, rooted in forgiveness, nurtured by kindness." Thus, in the elegant tradition of Victorian tales, a simple accident long ago wove the thread that bound two hearts across years, creating a legacy of love, family, and enduring happiness at Ashford Manor. The end.